There is a particular kind of tired that arrives at the end of the day, the kind that finds you scrolling through a screen you do not remember opening, holding a worry you cannot remember choosing. And yet, somewhere underneath that scrolling, the body is already beginning a slow tilt, the eyelids growing warmer, the tongue heavier, the room beginning to lean gently towards sleep. Something is opening, a narrow passage between the world you have been living in all day and the wider, quieter world your mind enters every night. The strange thing about this passage is that 5 minutes inside it can carry more weight than the 16 hours that came before. Most people cross this threshold without noticing, handing those final minutes to the brightness of a screen or to the loop of an unfinished thought. They do not realize that the seeds planted there grow differently than the ones planted anywhere else in the day. Welcome to Psychology for Sleep. For the next 2 hours, let your awareness rest here, on this threshold, the place where the day finally lets go, and something deeper begins to listen. You do not have to carry what the day asked of you. The threshold is open. Whatever you bring here softly will be held softly. And now we begin. You may have noticed how the world starts to feel slightly farther away in those last waking minutes. Sounds soften. The edges of the room blur. Your own thoughts drift instead of march. Science calls this state hypnagogia, the threshold between waking and sleep. During these minutes, your brainwaves slow from beta, the busy state of daytime, down through alpha, and finally into theta, the same wavelength your brain uses during deep meditation. The prefrontal cortex, which judges and filters and second guesses, begins to quiet first. While the deeper regions remain awake and receptive, what this means is that the protective gate around your inner world is gently lowering. The exhaustion you feel right now is not a sign you have done too much. It is the body telling you that the door is open. There is a particular slowness that arrives behind the eyes just before sleep, almost like the muscles forgetting how to hold their usual shape. Researchers studying eye movement have found that the eyes drift in slow rolling patterns during this transition. Patterns that appear only here, nowhere else in your day. These movements are coordinated by the brainstem, which begins shifting your nervous system from external attention to internal rest. The pupils narrow, the focus releases, and the visual cortex, which normally interprets the outside world, begins to turn its attention inward. This is why mental images often start to appear behind closed eyelids in these minutes. Even without effort, you are not imagining things. Your mind is simply turning toward its own quieter geography, trading the world it watched all day for one only you can see. Have you ever felt that thoughts in these final minutes seem different than thoughts during the day? Looser, stranger, sometimes wandering into places that surprise you. Neuroscientists call this hypnagogic ideation, and it happens because the brain's normal logical filters relax as you descend towards sleep. The default mode network, the part of your mind responsible for self-reflection and storytelling, becomes more active, while the executive network that keeps your thoughts on a track fades. This is the same state that creators across history have intentionally tried to reach. Salvador Dali held a spoon while drifting off, so the sound of it falling would wake him with images intact. What this tells us is that the mind, in these minutes, is not less awake. It is awake differently. There is a quality to the body's stillness right now that you may not have given a name to, a soft heaviness, as though gravity has remembered you. Sleep researchers describe this as the onset of muscle atonia, the gradual release of skeletal muscle tension that begins minutes before you actually fall asleep. The vagus nerve, the long messenger of the parasympathetic system, signals down through the body that the day has ended and the work of recovery may begin. Heart rate slows. Digestion deepens. The muscles around the jaw and shoulders soften without being asked. Your body has been waiting all day for permission to do exactly this. The release you feel is not weakness. It is your nervous system finally trusting that you are somewhere safe enough to rest. You may have felt the way breathing changes in these final minutes, almost without you noticing. The breaths growing longer, quieter, more even, as if they are listening to themselves. Studies in respiratory physiology show that as the brain descends into theta state, the rhythm of breath begins to synchronize with slow brainwave patterns. The intervals between inhales lengthen, and the depth of each breath increases as the diaphragm relaxes. This change does not require your effort. It happens because the systems that govern alertness are stepping down, and the systems that govern repair are stepping forward. What this tells us is that you do not have to breathe yourself to sleep. The breath, when given permission, knows the way. All you have to do is stop steering. There is a peculiar feeling that sometimes arrives in these minutes, a sense that you are both fully aware and somehow already elsewhere. Sleep scientists describe this as state dissociation, where parts of the brain enter sleep while other parts remain in waking patterns. The thalamus, which normally relays sensory information from the outside world, begins to dim its signals, while regions handling internal experience stay lit. This is why a sound from the street can feel oddly distant, or a memory oddly close. The boundary between inside and outside is becoming porous. What this means is that you are not losing focus. You are simply being permitted, for once in the day, to belong to your inner life more than to the outer one. Have you ever noticed that decisions made right before sleep feel different the next morning? Sometimes lighter, sometimes heavier, often clearer than expected. Researchers in memory consolidation have found that the brain tags emotional content encountered in the minutes before sleep for deeper processing during the night. The hippocampus, which catalogs experience, hands these final impressions to the slow wave systems that organize long-term memory. Whatever you carried in your mind as you crossed this threshold will be revisited, sorted, and reweighed while you sleep. What this tells us is that the last thought before sleep is not a closing thought. It is an opening invitation to everything that happens next inside you. There is a tenderness to the senses in these final minutes that you may have felt without knowing why. Sounds seem softer. Textures feel gentler. Even the weight of the blanket feels different. This is because the sensory cortex shifts its sensitivity threshold as you approach sleep. Scientists studying the transition state have measured a significant reduction in cortical response to external stimuli during the hypnagogic period. Your nervous system is quietly closing the doors to the outside. One by one, The room is not actually quieter than before. It is your perception softening, dialing down, making space. What this means is that the gentleness you feel right now is not the world being kinder. It is you, briefly, allowed to feel less pressed against by it. You may have noticed that images sometimes drift across your inner vision in these last minutes. Faces, places, fragments that do not belong to a single memory. Sleep researchers have a name for these: hypnagogic imagery, and they appear in a majority of people during the descent into sleep. These visions are generated as the visual cortex, freed from external input, begins to play with internal patterns. Old impressions, recent moments, half-remembered scenes blending into something new. They are not dreams yet. They are the mind beginning to speak in pictures because words are no longer needed. Your imagination is not asleep. It is being invited to take the lead, while the part of you that usually corrects it has finally stepped aside. There is a particular quality to time in these minutes. It stretches, folds, sometimes seems to forget itself. Sleep researchers have found that perception of duration becomes unreliable as the brain enters theta, with some people reporting that 10 minutes felt like 1, or 1 felt like 10. This is because the regions responsible for tracking time, the cerebellum and parts of the prefrontal cortex, are among the first to quiet during the transition to sleep. The clock inside you is, briefly, off duty. The rush you carry from the day is also off duty here. There is no schedule on this side of the threshold. And this is only the beginning of what these 5 minutes reveal about how your inner world actually works. You may have felt the way emotions soften in the minutes before sleep, not disappearing, but loosening their grip, becoming easier to hold from a distance. Neuroscientists studying emotional regulation have found that the amygdala, which handles fear during the day, begins to reduce its reactivity as you descend towards sleep. At the same time, the medial prefrontal cortex, which puts feelings into context, hands over to deeper regions that integrate emotion with memory. This is why a worry that felt enormous an hour ago can begin to feel smaller now, even before anything has changed. Your nervous system has its own way of grading the weight of feelings. Some of what felt heavy today is being made lighter, not because you decided so, but because you finally let it. There is a softness to language in these final minutes. Words feel slower. Sentences inside your head feel less pressing, as if the inner monologue is finally tired enough to rest. Studies of speech areas during the sleep transition show that Broca's and Wernicke's regions, the centers of verbal thought, reduce their activity significantly during hypnagogia. The internal narrator that has been running commentary all day is finally being released from duty. What replaces it is something quieter. Image. Sensation. The felt sense of being rather than the spoken sense of doing. What this means is that the silence growing inside you right now is not absence. It is presence finally arriving without needing to announce itself. Have you ever noticed that the body's temperature shifts subtly in these last waking minutes? Your hands and feet grow warmer, while the core of you cools by about 1 degree. Sleep researchers call this distal vasodilation, where blood flow redirects toward the periphery of the body to release heat from the core. This temperature drop is one of the strongest physiological signals for sleep onset, coordinated by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the body's master clock. Your body is, quite literally, lowering its own thermostat to invite sleep in. The warmth you feel in your hands or feet right now is not random. It is a quiet, ancient signal that you are being prepared for the journey. In the same way, bodies have prepared for thousands of years. There is a strange clarity that sometimes arrives just before sleep. A brief moment where everything feels organized, gentle, almost wise. Neuroscientists have found that during the late hypnagogic phase, the brain briefly enters a state of integrated processing. The default mode network and the salience network work together more harmoniously than they do during waking. Insights that escaped you all day may arrive without effort here. Solutions to problems you stopped trying to solve can appear as quiet recognition. This is why so many breakthrough ideas, from Edison to Einstein, have been traced to this exact window. Your mind is not less capable at the edge of sleep. It is, for a few minutes, allowed to think the way it has wanted to think all day. Sometimes the sense of self feels different in these minutes. Less defined, less defended, more permeable. Researchers studying the neural correlates of self-perception have found that the cortical midline structures, which maintain the boundary between you and the world, soften their activity during sleep onset. The story you have been telling about who you are today begins to dissolve at the edges. What remains is something simpler: awareness without commentary, presence without persona. The identity you have been carrying like a heavy coat all day is something you can put down here. The you that exists in these minutes is enough. Nothing has been subtracted. Only the parts that were exhausting to keep performing have been gently set aside. There is a particular kind of memory that emerges in these last waking minutes. Not the deliberate kind you summon, but the kind that arrives on its own, often gentle, often from far away. Sleep researchers studying memory access during hypnagogia have found that the hippocampus opens different retrieval pathways during this window than during waking hours. Old impressions, forgotten faces, small moments from years ago can surface here, often softened by time. The brain is briefly reaching for what waking consciousness usually hides. The past you encounter in these minutes is often kinder than the past you remember during the day. The threshold returns things to you gently, so that you may sleep alongside them rather than carry them. You may have felt how breath and heartbeat seem to find each other in these final minutes, falling into a rhythm that feels older than thought. Cardiologists studying autonomic balance during sleep onset have measured a phenomenon called heart rate variability coherence, where the spaces between heartbeats begin to align with the rhythm of breathing. This pattern signals to the entire body that the perceived day is over and recovery may begin. The cells listen, the organs respond. The whole system shifts gear. You do not have to coordinate your body into rest. The body knows how. All it needed was permission. And the permission is already arriving. There is a particular softness to imagination in these minutes. Pictures rise without being summoned. Scenes unfold without being directed. Sleep scientists call this autonomous imagery. And it is the mind beginning to speak in its native tongue. The brain regions that handle creative visualization become more active during this window. while the regions that judge or edit those images become less so. This is why colors can appear richer in hypnagogic imagery, why spaces feel more inhabited, why faces feel more familiar even when you cannot place them. The imagination resting inside you is not something you have lost during your busy days. It has been waiting, patiently, for these minutes when it can finally be let out without being asked to perform. Sometimes the sense of time inside the body slows here. Not the clock kind of time, but the inner sense of pace. Studies in chronobiology show that the body's internal rhythm shifts gear about 5 to 10 minutes before sleep onset, transitioning from the day's faster oscillations to slower ones that prepare the system for deep rest. The slowing is not just neurological. It happens in your blood pressure, your respiratory rate, even the rate of cell metabolism. The whole organism is lowering its tempo, as if remembering an older, gentler music. The pressing pace you have carried all day is not native to you. The body's natural pace is far slower than the pace the day demanded. This pace, right now, is yours. There is a quality of acceptance that often arrives in these minutes, without effort. A willingness to let things be unfinished, unresolved, ungripped. Researchers studying emotional processing during sleep onset have found that the brain's tendency to ruminate decreases significantly during late. The neural circuits that hold grievance and replay conflict become quieter, while the circuits that support integration and forgiveness become more active. This shift is not moral. It is biological. The softness you feel toward yourself right now is not pretense. It is who you actually are when the protective layers of the day finally let go. The compassion the day did not have time to give you is being given now, by your own body, in its own quiet way. You may have felt the way the room itself seems to soften in these minutes. Corners less sharp, light less specific, edges of furniture half dissolving into the dark. This is partly because the visual cortex begins to lower its acuity threshold during sleep onset, but it is also because attention shifts from external space to internal space. The room you have been moving through all day is being slowly handed back to itself, no longer required to be the stage for your tasks. What this tells us is that the gentleness in the air right now is not added. It is what was always there underneath the noise of the day. You are simply, briefly, allowed to feel it. There is a particular kind of belief that can take root in these minutes more easily than at any other time. Researchers in cognitive psychology have shown that the hypnagogic state increases what is called suggestibility, the receptivity of the mind to new information, without the usual layer of judging evaluation. This is why advertisers, hypnotherapists, and meditation traditions across cultures have long focused on this window. What enters here often stays. The mind in these minutes is not gullible. It is simply more open. The way soil after rain is more open. Whatever you hold close to your awareness as you drift, gently, will reach deeper than thought normally goes. The choice of what to bring across the threshold is yours. Sometimes the body's sense of weight changes in these final minutes. The limbs feel either heavier than usual, as if sinking into the mattress, or lighter than usual, as if barely there at all. This is the brain's spatial body map, recalibrating as you approach sleep. The somatosensory cortex, which tracks where your body is in space, begins to release its grip on physical proprioception. The body becomes, briefly, less of a known shape. The strangeness you may feel, heavy, light, drifting, is not concern. It is your nervous system releasing the constant tracking it has done all day. You are being allowed, finally, to not know exactly where every edge of you ends. And that not knowing is part of the rest. There is a quiet generosity in these final minutes, a tendency, often unnoticed, for the mind to soften toward itself. Studies of self-talk during sleep onset have found that internal narratives become less harsh, less performance-oriented, more forgiving. The inner critic, which has been working a long shift, is finally clocking out. What replaces it is closer to the voice you might use when speaking to a tired friend. What this means is that the kindness you feel toward yourself right now is not exceptional. It is what you have been underneath all the layers of effort. You did not have to earn it. You only had to be tired enough that it could finally come through. You may have begun to sense, by now, that these last minutes before sleep are not simply a slowing down. They are a different kind of awakeness. One in which the parts of you that get less air during the day are finally given room to breathe. The inner world has its own seasons, its own gates, its own windows when the soil is soft and ready. The 5 minutes you are crossing now are one of those windows. You do not have to know what you plant here. You only have to know that something is being received. The remaining facts follow this thread further inward, into how a single thought, held softly here, can change the tone of an entire day still hours away. That is where the next arc begins. Notice, gently, how the room has lowered its voice, not for you to do anything with, only for you to feel. The threshold you are crossing is older than your name. Beneath every busy day there has always been this same softness. Waiting. You have arrived where the seed of tonight begins, and what grows here grows quietly, while you sleep. Something in these last minutes may feel familiar. The slowness, the softness, the small permission to let the day be unfinished. This hour was made for nights like the one you are inside of. A quiet tap on the bell beneath the screen tells Psychology for Sleep that someone found their way here tonight. It costs nothing. It changes nothing about this hour. It simply helps the next quiet voice find the same threshold. On a night when they need it. One quiet tap, one sleepy soul at a time. You may have noticed how thoughts in these minutes seem to think themselves rather than be thought. They arrive without being summoned, drift without being directed. Researchers studying spontaneous cognition during sleep onset have found that the brain shifts from goal-directed thinking to associative thinking during this window. The neural pathways prioritized during the day, the ones that solve problems and complete tasks, give way to looser pathways that connect things by feeling, by image, by quiet resonance. This is the mind's other way of working, the one that does not get much room when the day is loud. The meandering you sense inside yourself right now is not distraction. It is the deeper intelligence of your mind, finally allowed to wander where it actually wants to go. There is a softness to the senses of the body in these minutes that you may not have a word for, a feeling of belonging more gently to your own skin. Neuroscientists studying interoception, the sense of the body's internal state, have found that awareness of internal sensations increases during the descent into sleep, while sensitivity to external sensations decreases. The body is being listened to more closely by you, and listening more closely to itself. The body you live inside has been speaking quietly all day, often unheard. The threshold of sleep is one of the few times it finally has your attention. Whatever it tells you now will not be loud, but it will be true. Sometimes the future fades from your mind in these final minutes. The meeting tomorrow, the email unanswered, the task half done. Sleep researchers have measured a sharp drop in prospective thinking during hypnagogia, where the brain regions responsible for future planning, particularly the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, reduced their activity significantly. The mind is being released, briefly, from the responsibility of preparing for what has not yet happened. The tomorrow you have been quietly carrying since this morning is not yours to hold right now. It will still be there, but here, on this threshold, the present is the only address you have to know. There is a particular quality to the silence in these minutes, a fullness rather than an emptiness. The quiet itself feels like a kind of presence. Researchers in auditory perception have found that during sleep onset, the brain processes ambient silence as a stable signal of safety, lowering the baseline of vigilance throughout the nervous system. The sound of nothing, in these moments, is one of the deepest sedatives the body has ever known. The silence holding you right now is not absence. It is your nervous system finally hearing the message it has been waiting all day to receive. Nothing is approaching. Nothing needs defending. You can lay down the watch. In these final minutes, the boundary between thinking and feeling begins to soften. Studies of emotional cognition during sleep onset show that the brain shifts toward integrating thought with somatic sensation, weaving the two into something deeper than either alone. The insular cortex, which bridges feeling and awareness, becomes more active here than during most waking hours. The way you understand things in this state is not less rigorous. It is fuller. You are thinking with your whole nervous system, the way a child thinks before they are taught to separate mind from body. The wisdom available to you here has been there all along. It only needed this stillness to be heard. There is a tenderness in how the breath behaves in these minutes. It slows, and it also seems to thicken, to take on weight, to feel as if it is breathing you rather than the other way around. Respiratory researchers studying the sleep transition have found that breath rate gently slows as the brain begins to surrender voluntary respiratory control to brainstem autonomic centers. The breath becomes, briefly, almost entirely autonomous. There is something inside you that has always known how to breathe without you. The releasing of that control, here, is part of the rest. You do not have to do this. You only have to allow it. You may have felt how the body's micro-movements settle into stillness in these last waking minutes. The small adjustments of position, the slight shifts of weight, all coming to rest. Sleep researchers have measured a phenomenon called postural relaxation, where the body's automatic position corrections decrease substantially during late hypnagogia. The body is, in the gentlest possible way, deciding to stay. The holding you have been doing all day, physical, postural, often unconscious, is finally being set down. Your body has been carrying you. Now it is being carried. 2. There is a quality to memory in these minutes that you may have noticed without examining it. The past feels softer, less sharp, less freighted. Neuroscientists have found that during the descent into sleep, the emotional intensity associated with memories decreases temporarily. Even before any consolidation work has begun, the mind is briefly offering you a gentler version of your own story. The events have not changed, but the way you feel them has. Here, in this threshold, where the day's hardness cannot quite reach, the threshold has its own way of softening what waking has not yet been able to put down. You may have felt the way the mind in these minutes seems to lay things down rather than pick them up. Researchers in cognitive load theory have found that during late hypnagogia, the working memory buffer, which holds the day's unresolved threads, releases its grip on most of its contents. The brain decides what to carry into sleep and what to let drift away. This sorting is not deliberate, but it is also not random. The mind tends to keep what felt meaningful and release what only felt loud. Some of what felt meaningful an hour ago was only loud. Here, the difference between loud and meaningful finally has room to show itself. You are allowed to forget what was never yours to keep. There is a particular kind of warmth that arrives in the chest during these final minutes. Not the heat of effort, but something gentler, almost like recognition. Researchers studying cardiac coherence during sleep onset have found that the heart's rhythm becomes more variable in a healthy way, weaving slow patterns that the body reads as a signal of safety. The vagus nerve responds, the breath responds, and a quiet warmth spreads outward through the chest. This is one of the body's deepest signals of trust. Sometimes described as a rise in vagal tone, the feeling rising softly in your chest right now is not sentiment. It is your nervous system telling you, in the only language it has, that you are home enough to rest. In these minutes, the inner voice grows fewer in number, not silenced, but choosing its words with more care, speaking less often. Studies of the default mode network during sleep onset show that the brain reduces self-referential narration significantly during late hypnagogia. The story you have been telling yourself about today, about who you are, about what is undone, becomes a quieter version of itself. The running commentary of the day has never been the truest part of you. It has only been the loudest. Underneath it has always been a quieter knowing. These minutes are when that knowing finally has room to be heard. In a voice you might not have recognized during the day, there is a softness to attention in these final minutes that you may not have noticed because it is not the attention you are used to. Researchers in cognitive neuroscience call it diffuse attention, a mode where awareness spreads outward instead of pointing inward at one object. Brain imaging shows that during this state, the frontoparietal control network, which normally focuses attention, steps back, while wider networks open. The mind is no longer aiming, it is just receiving. The gentleness of your attention here is not less attention, it is attention without the strain of focus. You are noticing the whole room rather than scanning it. This is the kind of awareness that rest is made of. Sometimes, the desire to be elsewhere begins to dissolve in these minutes. Researchers in motivational psychology have measured that the brain's seeking system, governed largely by dopamine pathways in the midbrain, reduces its activity significantly during the transition to sleep. The chemical engine that has been pulling you toward the next thing, the next message, the next moment, finally lowers its idle. The restlessness you have known all day was not your nature. It was a system doing its work. Here, with that system quieting, you can begin to feel what was always underneath: a body, a breath, a presence willing to be where it already is. There is a particular kind of trust that builds inside the body in these minutes, often without you choosing it. Researchers studying the autonomic nervous system have found that the parasympathetic dominance achieved during sleep onset takes between 5 and 12 minutes of stillness to fully establish. Once established, it is the deepest rest mode the body has, the foundation of all repair, all immune work, all hormone balance done overnight. The stillness you are inside of right now is not just stillness. It is the doorway to every restorative process your body performs while you sleep. The minutes you give to this threshold are minutes given to every system inside you that has been waiting. In these last waking minutes, certainty becomes less appealing. The pull to know, to decide, to settle questions, softens. Researchers in metacognition have found that confidence, judgments, and decision-making activity decrease sharply as the brain enters theta state. The mind is becoming more comfortable with not knowing. The certainty you have been chasing all day was often more exhausting than it was useful. Here, on the threshold, the questions you carry can simply sit beside you without demanding answers. They will still be there in the morning, gentler, more answerable, having spent the night in better company than your worry. Notice, just for a moment, how much further into the night you have already traveled. The screen has dimmed itself. The room has lowered its voice to match yours. There is no hurry to be anywhere except here. The next hour follows quietly, the way water follows the slope. There is a quality to perception in these minutes that resembles what infants experience before language. Direct, unmediated, without commentary. Developmental neuroscientists have found that the brain states associated with hypnagogia share spectral signatures with the resting brain states of very young children. The mind is briefly returning to a form of awareness that came before words, before stories, before the constant labeling of experience. The way the world feels to you right now, softer, simpler, less divided, is not a regression. It is a return to a mode of being you have always had access to, even if the day rarely lets you reach it. You are not losing language here. You are remembering what awareness felt like before language became the only way. You may have felt the way certain images or phrases linger longer in these minutes than they would during the day, gaining weight as you near sleep. Researchers studying memory encoding during the sleep transition have found that the hippocampus continues to encode salient impressions even as conscious awareness dims. Whatever you turn toward in these final minutes will be carried forward into the night's processing, where it will be revisited, woven, and integrated. The contents of these minutes matter more than the contents of most minutes. You do not have to be deliberate. You only have to notice what your awareness is naturally choosing. Often it knows, better than your daytime mind, what wants to be carried into rest. There is a particular kind of company you have inside yourself in these minutes that the daytime never quite allows. Studies of self-compassion during sleep onset show that internal warmth, the felt sense of being on one's own side, increases significantly as defensive cognition decreases. The parts of you that were arguing with each other earlier in the day are coming back into a quieter alliance. What this means is that the gentleness you feel toward yourself right now is not random. It is what has been underneath all the noise. A steady, patient companionship with yourself that has never gone away. The threshold of sleep is one of the few times that companionship finally gets the room it needs. The body in these final minutes begins to register weight differently, not as something pulling you down, but as something holding you. Researchers in proprioception have measured that the body's sense of gravitational pull during sleep onset is reinterpreted by the somatosensory cortex from load into support. The same physical force feels different. What felt like burden during the day, here, on this threshold, can feel like the bed underneath you doing exactly what it is for, the same weight. Received differently, the same body, finally allowed to be carried. There is a softness to thought content in these minutes that you may have felt without being able to describe. Researchers in cognitive science have found that the kinds of thoughts that arise during late hypnagogia are more concrete, more sensory, more rooted in present experience than the abstract thoughts of waking cognition. The mind is moving away from concepts and toward textures. The simpler your thoughts feel right now, the closer you are to the threshold. You do not have to think your way to sleep. You only have to let thought become small enough to fit through the door. In these minutes, the past and the future seem to fold inward toward this moment, as if both were resting against the present. Researchers in temporal cognition have found that during the descent into sleep, the brain regions that distinguish past, present, and future temporarily blur their boundaries. Time becomes a single, layered now, the dispersion you have felt all day, torn between what was, what is, what will be, is not native to your mind. It is a function of waking work. Here, on the threshold, you are gathered into a single moment that contains everything, without having to be anywhere else. The whole of you, briefly, in one place. There is a particular kind of forgiveness that arises in these minutes without ceremony. Studies in emotional regulation have shown that as the brain enters theta state, the prefrontal regions that hold judgment soften, while regions that hold compassion remain steady. The arithmetic of who was right and who was wrong, which has been running quietly in the background all day, finally goes off shift. The lightness you may feel toward unresolved things right now is not denial. It is your nervous system showing you that some of what you have been holding against the day, or against yourself, was always heavier to carry than it was worth. You can put it down here. The threshold accepts everything. In these last waking minutes, the sense of separation between you and the room softens. Researchers studying ego dissolution have found that the boundaries of the self, normally maintained by parietal lobe activity, become more porous during sleep onset. You are not losing yourself. You are simply being allowed to belong more easily to the space around you, the loneliness, if any, you carried into this hour is not the deepest truth about you. The deeper truth is that you have always been continuous with the room, the night, the breathing of the air, the gentle presence of everything that is also alive in this moment. Sleep returns you to belonging. There is a quality to the heart in these minutes that you may have felt as a kind of opening, even if no one would notice from the outside. Cardiologists in psychophysiology have found that during late hypnagogia, the heart's rhythm finds one of its most coherent patterns of the entire day, with vagal tone reaching its quietest signature. The body's largest rhythmic organ is settling into a deeper kind of trust. The soft expansion you may feel in your chest is not imagined. It is your heart, in the quietest possible way, opening to receive the rest it has been waiting for all day. You may have begun to notice, through the last 50 facts, that these minutes are not simply the body's wind down. They are a different kind of consciousness. What you carry across the threshold becomes more durable than what you carry through any waking hour. The brain in this state, with its judging filter relaxed and its deeper systems open, treats your final impressions the way soft soil treats a seed pressed in by hand. Halfway through, the answer to the question we began with is becoming clearer. These 5 minutes hold more power than 16 hours of waking because they are the only minutes when your inner world is unguarded enough to be planted. The second half follows what grows from whatever is held here. That is the question the second half follows. Notice how something inside you has lowered, even since the hour began. Not less of you, just less of what was never yours to hold. The body underneath your awareness is doing its quiet work. The breath underneath your breath is doing its quiet work. There is nothing here that requires you, and so the only thing left to do is be here while it is being done. You may feel how, by now, the body has settled into a rhythm that no longer needs your supervision. Sleep researchers have found that by this point in the transition, the brain has entered sustained theta dominance, where slow oscillations of 4 to 7 cycles per second carry the system toward deep sleep. The work of the threshold is mostly done. What remains is simple companionship, staying here, allowing what has begun to continue. You have already done the hardest part of this hour. The arriving, the setting down. From here, you only have to remain. There is a softness to the sense of presence in these minutes that feels closer to early childhood than to adulthood. Neuroscientists studying brainwave development have noted that the theta state adults reach during sleep onset is the dominant brain state of children under 6. You are returning, briefly, to a frequency you knew well before you were taught to be vigilant. The rest available to you here is not new. It is something you have always known how to do. The day asked you to forget. The threshold remembers for you. The room has become, by now, more atmosphere than architecture, less a structure of walls and corners, more a soft surrounding of warmth and dim light. Researchers studying spatial cognition during sleep onset have found that the parahippocampal place area, which encodes the geometry of rooms, reduces its activity noticeably during late hypnagogia. The room you are in is dissolving into the room you are in. you no longer have to hold the shape of your surroundings. The space is holding itself. You can let go of the map. There is a particular gentleness to how memory behaves in these minutes. Older memories may arrive softer than they did the last time you visited them. Researchers in memory reconsolidation have found that during the descent into sleep, retrieved memories are temporarily destabilized and become available for emotional re-encoding. The brain is, briefly, willing to soften the edges of what hurt. The past you visit here is not the same past you carry during the day. Something is being quietly rewritten by the gentlest mechanism the mind has. While you rest, in these minutes, hope and acceptance seem to become harder to tell apart. Researchers studying affective neuroscience have noted that during late hypnagogia, the brain regions responsible for future-oriented optimism and present-oriented acceptance fire in increasingly overlapping patterns. The wanting and the having are blurring. The contentment you feel right now is not resignation. It is a deeper form of hope, one that does not require the future to be different in order to rest. Both feelings, here, are made of the same quiet material that the day rarely allowed them to share. There is a quality to the breath in these final minutes that resembles the breath of someone being held. Slow, even, fully arrived. Researchers in attachment neuroscience have found that the breathing patterns achieved during sleep onset closely mirror the patterns of an infant being safely held by a calm caregiver. The body is using the same template. The felt sense of safety you have inside yourself right now is something the body has known how to generate from its earliest hours. You do not have to be held by anyone tonight. The body holds itself, the way it once knew how to be held. By this point in the hour, the things that needed to be done feel less like requirements and more like rumors of requirements. Researchers in motivational psychology have shown that during sleep onset, the brain reduces the perceived pressure of pending tasks noticeably. The to-do list has not changed. Your relationship to it has. The weight of obligation you carried into this hour is not as real as it felt. Much of pressure is a function of arousal, not of truth. Here, where arousal has lowered, the truer size of things finally appears. There is a particular softness to the way you exist in your own body in these minutes. Less like a tenant, more like a guest, more like belonging. Researchers in interoceptive awareness have found that the body during late hypnagogia is experienced more as home than as machinery. The relationship between you and your body becomes less transactional. The body you live inside is not a tool. It is a quiet companion that has been with you all day, asking very little, doing very much. These minutes are when that companion is finally given attention. Let it feel attended to. In these minutes, the difference between effort and ease no longer applies. Researchers in flow state psychology have noted that the late hypnagogic state shares neural signatures with peak flow experiences, where action and awareness merge. There is nothing to push, nothing to resist. The simplicity of being here is not the absence of doing. It is the quiet, integrated kind of being that the rest of life is always reaching toward. You are inside something rare. Let it carry you. There is a tenderness to the relationship between thought and silence in these minutes. A thought arises. A silence holds it. And the silence is larger than the thought. Researchers studying meditation and sleep onset have noted that the default mode network reduces its self-narrative output substantially during this window. The mind has stopped telling stories about itself. The silence you are inside of is not the absence of mind. It is the larger field that mind has always been a smaller part of. You are returning to the proportions that were always true. In these minutes, you no longer feel the pull to be understood. Researchers in social cognition have found that the brain regions that handle interpersonal evaluation and social positioning quiet significantly during sleep onset. You are temporarily released from the long, exhausting project of being seen correctly. The part of you that has spent the day trying to be understood by others is finally allowed to rest. You are understood here in a different way, by your own body, by your own breath, by the quiet that is willing to hold you regardless of how the day went. There is a particular kind of weight to the mind in these minutes, not heaviness, but density, as though awareness has become more concentrated, even as it slows. Researchers in consciousness studies have found that subjective awareness during late hypnagogia exhibits a paradoxical quality, lower in arousal but higher in depth. You are less alert, but more present. Depth and effort are not the same. The deepest moments of your inner life often happen when you are doing the least. This is one of them. In these minutes, the desire for distraction has fallen away. Researchers in attention have measured that the brain's tendency to seek novel stimuli, governed by the locus coeruleus, decreases significantly during the descent into sleep. The pull toward the next thing, which has shaped most of your day, is finally releasing its grip. The satisfaction you feel in simply being here is not boredom finally giving up. It is the deeper part of you, which never wanted distraction in the first place, finally getting the night it was waiting for. There is a softness in the way the heart beats in these minutes that you may not have language for. Cardiologists have measured that the heart's variability during late sleep onset reaches one of the most coherent patterns of the entire day, comparable to states of deep meditation. The heart is, in a sense, content. The well-being of the heart is not only a matter of what happens in the world, it is also a matter of the rhythms it is allowed to find. You have given it permission to find a slower rhythm tonight. It is finding it. In these minutes, the inner world feels more like a room than a road, a place to be in, rather than a path to travel. Researchers studying internal experience during sleep onset have noted that the felt sense of one's own inner life becomes more spatial and less narrative. You are not moving through your mind. You are sitting inside it. The relationship to your own interior is changing here. You are becoming less the traveler and more the dweller. Rest, in the truest sense, requires this shift. There is a particular quality to gratitude that surfaces in these minutes without effort. Researchers in positive neuroscience have found that the brain regions associated with appreciation and recognition of simple goodness become slightly more active during the descent into sleep. The threshold tends to evoke quiet thankfulness, not for anything specific, but for the fact of being here, allowed to rest. The gratitude you feel right now is not performance. It is what the nervous system naturally produces when it finally feels safe enough to look back on the day with kindness. Let it stay. By now, Even your sense of time has softened into something more like atmosphere than measurement. Researchers studying temporal perception during late hypnagogia have found that subjective duration becomes elastic. With the mind no longer tracking minutes as discrete units, time is no longer a line. It is the room you are in. The pressing pace that once drove the day was never made of time itself. It was made of attention, here, with attention softened. Time becomes what it always was underneath. A quiet, continuous presence holding everything. There is a quality to the breath now that is no longer breath as you knew it during the day. Researchers in respiratory neuroscience have found that during late hypnagogia, the rhythm of breath synchronizes with the slow oscillations of the cortex itself, creating a unified low-frequency wave through the body. The breath and the brain are speaking the same language. The unity you feel inside yourself right now is not metaphor. It is a measurable convergence of systems that, during the day, had to work separately. Tonight, they are one. In these minutes, the small ache you have carried somewhere in your body has softened. Researchers in pain perception have measured that the brain's pain processing networks reduce their output measurably during the descent into sleep. The body has not changed. The way the brain interprets its signals has. Some of what felt sharp earlier in the day has become quieter, not because you fixed it, but because the system that amplifies discomfort has finally lowered its volume. Some pain is real. Some is just the day amplifying what was always going to be there. Both, here, are smaller. There is a particular kind of permission that lives inside these minutes. Permission to not be useful, not be productive, not be doing. Researchers in self-determination theory have found that the brain's evaluation of self-worth based on output decreases significantly during sleep onset. You are valued here simply because you are. The worth you have been measuring all day was a story told by waking cognition. The deeper sense of being valuable, underneath all conditions, is the one available to you here. Let it be the one you fall asleep inside of. In these minutes, the longing for someone or something distant has gentled. Researchers in attachment neuroscience have found that the brain regions that maintain felt separation from absent others soften during the descent into sleep. What was missing during the day feels less missing now. The connection you carry inside yourself to people and places you love is not dependent on their proximity. It is held in your nervous system, in your body, in your breath, here, where the day's distances no longer apply. That connection becomes available again. You are not alone here. You never were. There is a softness to the boundaries between memory and imagination in these minutes that you may have felt without realizing. Researchers studying creative cognition during sleep onset have found that the brain regions that distinguish remembered from imagined become temporarily blurred. The past, the present, and what could be all become accessible to a single, gentler form of attention. The inner world available to you here is wider than it usually is. You have access to more of yourself in these minutes than you do at any other time of day. Whatever rises now belongs to you, even if you cannot name where it came from. In these final minutes, the difference between waking and dreaming begins to feel less like a boundary and more like a slope. Sleep researchers have found that the transition from hypnagogia to REM sleep is gradual, with brief microdreams beginning to appear before full sleep onset. The dream world is not somewhere you go. It is something you slowly become part of. You do not have to chase sleep. You only have to allow it to keep slowly becoming you, the way it has been doing all along. There is a quality to the silence around you in these minutes that resembles being held. Researchers in environmental neuroscience have noted that the perception of ambient silence during late hypnagogia activates the same brain regions associated with being safely contained. The way a child feels held in a soft blanket. The room is holding you. The night is holding you. The safety you feel right now is not just internal. It is a relationship between you and the space around you. An old agreement the body remembers from times long before any of your worries existed. By now, you may begin to feel what the entire hour has been quietly proving, that these final minutes before sleep are the most unguarded minutes of your inner life. What is held here with care reaches deeper than what is held anywhere else with effort. The threshold you are crossing is the thinnest barrier between the world you live in and the world that lives in you. Tonight, whatever seed you place gently in this opening will quietly take root in the soil below. The brain in this state is open in ways it cannot be at any other hour. Whatever you bring across with quiet intention continues working long after you have stopped paying attention. The remaining facts carry a different quality. They no longer explain. They simply accompany. Every night, the same opening returns. You did not have to earn it. You did not have to schedule it. It comes the way evening comes, without asking permission, without leaving notice. What you place here softly tonight will be tended to while you sleep. By morning, something will be different. Though you may not be able to say what, this is how the body has always grown what is planted gently. The body knows it is being received. The breath has slowed past where it usually slows. The room has become a quieter version of itself, holding you the way it has always held you. Only now you can feel it. The day has truly ended inside you. What remains is the kind of presence that does not have to do anything to be enough. You are already where you needed to arrive. There is no one watching now, no one waiting. No part of the day still expects you to be alert, to be ready, to be anything but exactly this. The watching that has shaped most of your hours has finally stepped away. The watching from inside has also stepped away. You are alone with yourself in the gentlest possible way. And that aloneness is a form of company. The mind that has been speaking all day is finally tired enough to stop. What remains is something older. Awareness without commentary. Presence without effort. The voice that named, judged, and explained your day has lowered itself into silence. What is awake now is the part of you that existed before that voice ever learned to speak. It has been here all along, waiting for the chance to be heard. You have crossed a threshold tonight that millions of people are crossing at this same hour, in their own rooms, in their own quiet. The hour is shared, even when it is private. Somewhere a window is dim. Somewhere a body is settling deeper into a bed it has waited all day for. The night is wide, and you are one breath inside it, held by the same softness holding everyone else. The seeds being placed here tonight are small. They are not announcements. They are not declarations. They are only the soft, true things your awareness chooses to rest beside as you drift. A feeling of being held, a quiet acceptance of what could not be finished, a small kindness toward yourself. These will grow while you sleep, and they will reach you again, tomorrow, as the quiet weather of your day. Whatever has felt unfinished today is being held in a different way now. Not solved, not abandoned, just allowed to wait inside something quieter than your daytime worry. The threshold has its own way of carrying what you cannot yet carry. The mind that has been gripping all day is finally being shown that letting go is its own kind of solving. You can rest from solving here. The body underneath you has done its work. The mind has begun to release. The breath is already breathing the slow, deep rhythm that will carry you the rest of the way. There is nothing left in this hour that asks anything of you. The systems that have been running quietly beneath your awareness all day are now in full keeping. They will take it from here. You may rest inside their care. There is nothing here that needs improving, nothing that needs deciding. Only this softening, only this allowing, only this slow tilt toward rest. The doing has done its part. The not doing is the part that begins now. You have not failed to finish the day. The day has finally finished with you. And the kindness of that ending is what you are inside of right now. The night is not happening to you. It is happening with you. You are part of its rhythm. The way the room is part of its silence. The way the breath is part of its slowness. There is no boundary between you and the night anymore. The same softness that has settled over the room has settled inside you. You are simply one quiet thing among many, all of them resting at once. What you brought into this hour does not have to be carried out of it. The threshold accepts what wants to stay behind. You may leave it here gently, and find tomorrow lighter for the leaving. The hour is a kind of small generosity given to you each night, where the day can be set down without ceremony. The version of you that wakes up will already be different for having let it go. The quietness around you is not empty. It is full of the same presence that has been keeping you company since the day began, only now without the noise that hid it. The presence has many names in many traditions, but here it asks for none. It is simply the soft companion of every sleeping body, the keeper of the threshold. You are inside its care now, the way you were before you learned to worry. The warmth of the blanket is enough. The shape of the pillow is enough. The slow rise and fall of your own chest is enough. Nothing else is being asked of you. The whole of your evening has narrowed to these three soft truths, and they are sufficient. You have not arrived here lacking anything. You have arrived here whole, even if the day tried to convince you otherwise. The mind is releasing the last of its small holdings. The body is settling into the deepest version of its rest. What remains is the simple fact of being here, alive, allowed. There is nothing to prove inside this aliveness. It does not have to perform. It does not have to explain itself. It only needs to be received. And you are, finally, the one receiving it. You have done enough today. You have been enough today. There is nothing left to prove, nothing left to finish, nothing left to be other than already arrived. The arriving was always the point, not the achieving, not the proving, not the becoming, just this. the body in the bed, the breath in the room, the soft fact of having made it through to here. The slow rhythms of the night are gathering around you. The body recognizes them. The breath recognizes them. The deeper parts of you have been waiting all day for this exact frequency. The rhythms are not new. They are the same rhythms that have rocked human bodies to sleep for as long as there have been human bodies. You are being held by something far older than this room, far older than tonight. Whatever soft hope you brought into this hour is being received. Whatever quiet trust you offered is being held. None of it has been wasted. All of it is taking root. The seeds are not chosen for their size. They are chosen for the quality of the soil they fall into. Tonight the soil is soft. Whatever you brought, no matter how small, is enough for what wants to grow. The night belongs to the part of you that does not have to be busy in order to be real. That part is welcoming you home. It has been waiting in a quiet room inside you all day, listening for the moment when the noise would lower enough that you might hear it. The moment has arrived. The welcome is complete. You are home in the truest sense. There is nothing in this room that is not allowed to be here with you. The thoughts, the feelings, the body's small aches. All of them are being held by the same soft presence. None of them are being judged or sorted or fixed. They are simply being kept, the way a hand keeps a bird that has stopped struggling. You are that kind of kept. Here, tonight. The threshold is wider now than it was an hour ago. You have made yourself wide enough to cross it by doing nothing but staying. The staying was the practice. The not leaving was the gift. The whole of this hour has been one long, soft act of remaining, and you have done it well. There is nothing left now except the gentlest letting go. Sleep is not somewhere you have to go. It is something that has been quietly coming toward you for the last hour. You have only to let it arrive. The arriving will not announce itself. It will not ask permission. It will simply be the next breath. The breath after that. The slow disappearing of any sense that you were ever doing this on your own. The room is dimmer than your awareness now. The night is larger than your thoughts now. The breath is slower than your attention now. All of it is right. Everything has finally taken its proper proportion. The small things have become small. The vast things have become vast. And you are right-sized inside it all, the way you were always meant to be. Before the day asked you to be larger than yourself. You may feel yourself, by now, less inside your body and more around it. A soft presence still here, still aware, but no longer pressed against any single edge of yourself. The edges have softened in the way edges soften at the end of a long, kind day. You are spreading out into the room, into the night, into the breath, the way water spreads gently into the shape it is given. The seeds are planted. The night will tend to them. By morning, something will have grown that you did not have to grow on purpose. You will not see it as growth. You will only feel it as a slight lightness, a quieter beginning, a sense of having been kept while you slept. The work of tonight will show itself softly, the way most lasting things do. The hour has done what it came to do. You did not have to do anything but be here. That was always all that was being asked. The being here was not small. It was the deepest kind of doing. the kind that does not announce itself, the kind that changes things from underneath. You have done it tonight, simply by staying, and the staying has been received. The answer is not in the science. It is in this. The most unguarded minutes of your life are the most truthful ones. Whatever you place here gently will become part of you. The way light becomes part of a room without being asked. You did not waste these minutes tonight. You used them the way they were always meant to be used. The threshold is open, and whatever you carried here softly is already growing. The room, the breath, the night, and you. No longer four things, only one. Slow, gentle dissolving. There is nothing left to do. There is nowhere left to go. Sleep is already happening, and so are you. There is a quiet truth that arrives once an hour like this one is over, that the most lasting changes inside a life are not made by the long, loud effort of daytime, but by the small, gentle attentions placed in the softest minutes of the night. You did not have to fix anything tonight. You did not have to solve, decide, or resolve. You only had to arrive at the threshold and let what wanted to settle. Settle. Whatever you brought across this hour, even the parts of it you cannot name, is already being held by something older and steadier than your daytime mind. The seeds you placed here gently will not announce themselves. They will simply appear in the morning, as the slightly softer way you wake, the slightly kinder thought you have toward yourself, the slightly easier breath in your chest as the new day begins. None of this was wasted. All of it was used. But the hour has only opened one door. There is another quiet question the body begins to ask once the threshold has been crossed. The question of what the deeper waves of sleep are actually speaking, in the language only the resting brain can hear. The next video in Subconscious Mind Reprogramming begins there. You can let the threshold close gently now, the way a soft door closes on a room that has finally grown quiet. Let your breath find the slowest version of itself, the one that knows the way without your help. Whatever you placed here tonight is already growing while you rest. But if your eyes are closed, stay there. Rest well. Quiet one, who almost gave these minutes to the screen tonight, but chose, instead, to be here. You were never wasting the day. You were waiting for this hour, where the soil is soft, and what you plant gently is enough, where psychology becomes the softest place to rest. Good night.